Hey, gang, before we begin, we've all experienced blackouts before, right? Particularly at night, that bizarre feeling when the power grid goes out and our homes go completely dark. I'm preparing for my next blackout with a wonderful device called the Lightbug. The Lightbug is a portable, solar-powered, ultra-bright floodlight with 3 lighting modes. And because it's solar-powered, you obviously never have to worry about wires or batteries. And it comes with a power indicator so you know how much charge is left. It's perfect to light up your fishing, your hiking, or camping trips because it's so lightweight and portable. And if you click on that link below today, you're going to get 20% off your order. So what could be better? Make sure to click on that link below or head on over to lightbug.com and get your emergency backup light today.
His name is Dr. Steve Turley. He has a PhD from Durham University, and he has published more than 20 books. Took me 15 years to write one. He's an American conservative commentator and YouTuber who mentions the rise of the new right. And there are frequent uploads, which are 3 videos a day that he does. And he wrote a terrific piece we're going to talk about. Welcome, Steve Turley, to Spouting Off. You're with Karen Kataline.
Oh, thanks, Karen. It's great. I love to spout off myself. Yes, a few videos a day to spout off and make the left go crazy. Yeah, which is very easy to do.
They don't have far to go either. So you had this terrific piece called "Media is Shocked" as second impeachment trial making Trump even stronger. Well, that's good news because I've been talking about how we hope, like Purim, which is coming up at the end of the month, that they will be hoisted by their own petard. So tell us, Steve Turley, how that's possible. Give us a little tease about this article and how it is that it's making Trump stronger. We hope so.
Yeah. Well, one of the political dynamics that's been going on now for a couple of decades. We certainly saw it with the Tea Party back in 2010, but scholars are noticing it all over the world, is that there's a growing animus, not so much between Republicans versus Democrats per se, or liberals versus conservatives. It's not so much ideological. It's a growing animus, a growing hostility and animosity between the people versus the political class. That's really what's going on today. If you want to understand why we had Trump in the first place in 2016, just ask yourself, why did you have Brexit just a few months earlier than that, right? In Britain in June of 2016, same dynamics. What scholars have noticed is that the permanent political class and the values and the concerns and the interests by which they govern their affairs is growing increasingly alienated and away from the sentiments, the concerns, and the values of the people. So much so that when they speak, our politicians open their mouths, it's like they don't even make sense anymore to the vast majority of the people. They're talking different language. And this whole kabuki theater of impeachment is a perfect example. The vast majority of the American people know. Rasmussen in particular, his polls have showed the vast majority think this is a waste of time. They know he's not going to be convicted. It's a waste of money. They're not watching it. Even CNN, Brian Stelter had to admit the other day that nobody is tuning into this. And more leaders are now, like Ted Cruz today, coming out and saying there's no way Trump is even going to remotely get convicted. This was all a waste of time. This is the political class governing according to their own values, interests, and concerns, which are increasingly alienated from the values, interests, concerns of the people, which President Trump embodied. Even if you didn't vote, even if you didn't vote for him. It's so interesting. We found, for example, African Americans have one of the highest support levels for border security. They want the borders, locked up, as it were, and secured. And why? Because, illegal immigration has really hurt entry-level job position, particularly in urban areas.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
So we're finding that most Americans really do believe in America first, MAGA-based, both domestic and foreign policy. And President Trump embodies this notion of the politics of the people, basically invading and overriding the politics of the political class. And the more we see the politics of the political class being pushed down our throats, the stronger Trump becomes.
That is such a great analysis. And what a lot of people don't do is kind of work backwards from the conclusion, which is to say that what they really went after in Trump was the notion of borders, language, culture, boundaries, the Constitution, America first. That's what they really find threatening, because it's contrary to everything they're trying to push down our throats, just like you said. You cannot have socialism and communism if people have individual freedom. You just can't do it. And that seems to be clearer today than ever before. I know what I was going to ask you, and this is something I've been asking a lot of people that I interview, because this is just speculation and conjecture, because nobody really has an answer. So let's be creative here and speculate. It isn't just being misguided tyrants that the left is doing this stupid impeachment, which only makes them look petty, desperate, weak, and foolish, but they don't seem to care. But what do you think is the real reason, or among the real reasons, that they're even doing this misguided idiocy? Why are they? They've got a monopoly of power, the trifecta of power in Washington, D.C., and they're doing this? Why?
Oh, that's a great question, Karen. I think I got a little insight for you, and I appreciate the way. I like how you set it up, because I think you set it up really responsibly. Of course, we don't know, what's going on in their inner cranium or anything like that. But I think we could take a very interesting guess here. Mm-hmm. In the sociological literature, there is actually a concept known as resentment politics. It's a really interesting field of study, resentment politics. So we all know what resentment is. So just look at your woke warriors, and that's they're the embodiment of resentment.
They live in resentment. Yes,
they do. It's right. It's just this horrid indignation against supposedly being treated unfairly and all that sort of stuff. What's so interesting is scholars have noticed resentment has a built-in us versus them framework to it, and the political class has always been worried about resentment. They knew it was a dangerous emotion that could lead to rebellion. And you see this going all the way back to the political leaders of classical Athens and Rome and all of that. And what was fascinating is they resolved that fear of the people rising up against the political class generally by appealing to threats on the outside. So, we Romans need to be worried about, Hannibal and the Carthaginians. We look to the outside, and then that creates an internal solidarity between the people and the political class. What scholars have noticed is that since the 1960s, that unity of that internal unity bred by external threats, that got sacrificed by more and more politicians and activists identifying an enemy from within, an internal enemy. And that in effect, repurposed resentment, and it transformed it into a tool for dividing the populace, dividing the people, and thus sequestering the political class from this very dangerous emotion of resentment. So as long as we resent each other, Karen, we're not going to resent the political class. That's the idea. What made Trump so dangerous is he came in and he turned the resentment back on the political class. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter if you were Republican. It didn't matter if you were a Democrat. If you were a politician, you were stupid. Remember in 2016, these stupid politicians. They open up our borders. They ship our jobs overseas. They spit on our culture, our customs and traditions, and we, the people, are going to put an end to that. And so I think what you got here is both Democrats and Republicans. I know there's not many, thank God, but you're 10 in the House of Representatives, you're 6 in the Senate. They're all coming together to try to, how do you put it, sort of reframe or reboot that resentment back between us. We're supposed to be resenting each other, and who better than getting half the country to resent the 74 million MAGA people who voted for Trump. I honestly believe that's what's going on. And again, I don't think in the end it's going to work. The populist genie's out of the bottle. Republicans and Democrats are coming together, and they're saying this political class is out of control and they need to be stopped. So I think 2016 was just the beginning.
Oh, boy, that is not only the best explanation I've heard, but it's even a little bit optimistic for once, which isn't, there has been precious little optimism to go around these days. But to hear you talk, Steve, it also, not that you need to know this, but my heritage is Jewish, and my religion, and, born and raised, what have you. And it sounds, it's so dangerous, cynical, and just frightening to make scapegoats out of a certain collective population, which is exactly what was done. What you describe is how Nazism came into being in the late 30s. Supposedly we're not allowed to make Holocaust comparisons, but in fact, if you see what's going on in the propaganda that is being pushed and the alternate reality, you can see how something like that can happen with whatever agenda the tyrant has. Whatever the agenda is, they can make way for it if they use these psyops that are being used now. So the enemy from within was the Jewish person in Germany. And they're using a lot of the same things. What about the Reichstag fire of January 6th, when they were rioting and inciting rioting all summer long in full public view of everyone?
Right,
and yet now they turn right around and they say Donald Trump, who said march patriotically and peacefully to the people's house? Really?
yeah. Danged if you do, danged if you don't. Right? Heads I win, tails I lose. I know we've all seen that before. Yeah, I think we're beginning to recognize big time that political correctness goes way beyond just some kind of speech code.
Yeah.
Political correctness it involves two things. It involves the attempt to get people to conform, and then it also involves the ability to cast out.
Hold that thought, because I've got 30 seconds to the next break. You've graciously agreed to stay with us while we take this quick break. We're with Dr. Steve Turley. Wonderful discussion about the psychological aspects of what we're watching here. Very, very serious stuff, and we're still laughing. Karen Kataline, I am your host of Spouting Off. I do remember that. And we will take a break, and we'll be back with Dr. Steve Turley right after this. Welcome back to Spouting Off. I'm your host, Karen Kataline. It's such a pleasure to talk to Dr. Steve Turley, eloquent author and eloquent speaker. He has a piece out right now at turleytalks.com called Media Shocked as Second Impeachment Trial Making Trump Even Stronger. We're going to pick up where we left off regarding political correctness when I so rudely had to interrupt you. Steve, go right ahead and keep a going there.
Well, yeah, you were mentioning, of course, the Holocaust comparisons and so forth, and how we're not allowed to use them anymore, except, of course, if you're on the left, then you can use it all you want. And it just reminds me of the fact that we have to recognize that, political correctness is not so much a speech code. That's what we tend to think of it as. Political correctness is really, it's more of a protective mechanism. And you're finding that in the scholarly literature as well. They recognize that political correctness involves two things. It involves getting people to conform to liberal opinion on all social matters, but then it also has a mechanism to cast out, to reject those who do not conform, to liberal opinion on social matters. And so what we're finding is, in many ways, political correctness is kind of like a taboo code. That's the way anthropologists would consider it. So in order for a taboo code to work, it's helpful to think of a social order like an immune system. So if you're going to have a healthy social order, you have to have a kind of social immune system that identifies threats to that order, but then also effectively neutralizes those threats, right? What good is it if it could just identify the threat, but it can't do anything about it? That's what a taboo code does. And that's exactly how political correctness is functioning today. So what we saw with Gina Carano, for example, yesterday, and the cancel culture in general, what we're seeing is nothing less than a mass excommunication of anyone, any idea, any behavior. I love this idea of the scapegoat, just being cast out, any institution, any sports name, any culture, any custom, any tradition that offends the new left. This is why offense is such a capital crime today in terms of its power to eliminate threats to a social order that's now been recalibrated around the offended, right? The marginalized, the disenfranchised, and the like.
Well,
this is why voter IDs are racist today. I mean, it makes no sense in our minds, but
it opens the way to, forgive me, but I'm just dying. I'm chomping at the bit here, and I apologize. It opens the way to thought crimes because you have to read somebody else's mind and censor yourself for fear of offending protected groups.
Absolutely.
It's terrifying. I might also add that I've ranted for almost a year now, and I shudder to think that it's been a year, but I knew it would be, about the masks. The masks are a giant psyop designed not only to create collectivism, obedience, and snitching on one's neighbor, but it also draws attention to people who dare to defy the social order. So it works the same way, does it not?
Oh yeah, no, you got it. As long as people see, in many respects, I think this is what made Trump such a significant figure. For the first time in our lifetimes, he was a Republican that really embodied a fundamentally different social order, right? He wanted closed borders. He wanted manufacturing jobs brought back home. He wanted energy independence. He wanted our cultures, customs, and traditions celebrated, even if that meant putting some limits on the economy or economic growth. And those all feed into each other, of course, because if you have open borders, well, you could kiss your culture goodbye, as well as a lot of your jobs, because entry-level job positions are no longer going to be available to somebody who needs to get paid $15 an hour when you found somebody who's going to be willing to do it for $2 under the table. So it all feeds into each other. Border security, economic security, cultural security. That's the politics of the world right now. You mentioned Israel, for example. In Israel right now, as we speak, the left basically doesn't exist. The Labor Party is fascinating. So this is the party of Ehud Barak, Yitzhak Rabin. The Labor Party in the last election barely, I don't even think they broke 10% of the vote. They've died. They've withered up. There's now the Blue and White Party. That's the new center-left party there that's led by a general. It's much more right than left. In many respects, all over the world you look, the left has collapsed. It's dead. Nation after nation. It's going nation after nation, population after population are going back to nation culture, custom, tradition as the way of life. So. And so this is the attempted reset, but I don't think it's going to work.
God, I hope you're right. But I am heartbroken when I hear, and I have a couple friends in Israel, and I don't understand Israel politics at all because I'm an American, that Benjamin Netanyahu, Mr. Conservative Israeli Prime Minister, is trying to make guinea pigs of the Jewish people and pretty much force and coerce them to take the vaccine. What does this sound like to you, to make guinea pigs of Jewish people is makes me heartsick. I don't know what they could be thinking. You know, you want to take a vaccine, whatever you want to do, voluntary is the way to go. The minute they start coercing, bullying, and intimidating, you know, I'm gone. I'm over it. And yet they're doing this. He's doing this. I mean, he wants to make the Jewish people some sort of example for the world, for a vaccine that many, if I may say, Jewish doctors like Simone Gold and others are saying it is completely untested. It is ill-advised. She would never give it to her kid. None of that. And yet here we have this. I don't know. I don't know if you're like an expert. I'm certainly not on Israeli politics.
Right. No,
what the heck is going on there?
Yeah, I don't know on that one. What I would, whenever something like that happens, I think your intuition is right. Keep your eye on the ultra-Orthodox parties because they're popping up a new one's popping up every election. And we have to remember that Haredi Jews are the ones that are having the children. So what scholars are noticing in who are demographic experts, if I recall, back in the 1960s, Haredi school children were only about 1 in 5 school children in Israel. Today, they are nearly half. Okay, we're 1 in 2 kids are Haredi Jewish and
black hat Jews.
Oh, you got it. Very conservative. You know, the ultra-Orthodox Jews we'd see in Bronx, who all, by the way, voted for Trump, 70% of which is a beautiful manifestation of this kind of new populism here.
No-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. Exactly, and that's what I think. I think that's what you're going to see in Israel as well. You're going to see much, much more of the population moving in that direction.
I have to rush off and end the show. I got to have you back. What fun it is to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have to leave it there. TurleyTalks.com is how you can read more from Dr. Steve Turley. And thank you to BBS Radio. It's Friday. Party Friday, as my friends Chuck and Julie say. So go out and have fun, even if it's freezing out there. Thanks to Doug and everybody at BBS. And thanks to HW, the guy with an IQ greater than that of a small soap dish. And tune in next week when there will be so much to spout off about Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday here on Spouting Off.